That's a good thing. You know,
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you all for being here this afternoon. I'm Pat Tracy. I'm a member of Sundays at 2 committee, and today we are very fortunate to have an opportunity to hear from Katie Rose. I think most of us in the room are probably come-heres. This is a comeback here. A person that Katie and her husband were born here, went away, had great adventures, and now we're lucky enough to have them back here. And if you haven't had an opportunity to visit their place at Adrift in Whitestone, you're missing a wonderful dining experience and just a great experience. So I'm going to turn it over to Katie, who's going to talk about what it's like to go away, come back, and
everything in between. Well, I guess I'll first start off with just saying welcome. Thank you, friends, neighbors, loved ones, and a lot of curious minds, some new faces to me. I look forward to the conversation that we're about to have. I was putting together a PowerPoint, and I quickly was just like, no, I'd rather have a conversation, because that allows me to go into my limited experience and usher your questions and then grow from there. So we'll do a little bit of that, kind of stopping briefly in between, as there are little sections of or chapters of life, instead of holding everything at the very end. That allows me to kind of add to the initial message I have. So what a great emotion, excitement. I'm excited and terrified to be here right now. This is an emotion I'm pretty adept in now, you'll find throughout this conversation. And I'm much more comfortable having something to do with my hands while I'm standing in front of a lot of people, but this works, and I hope we all get a little bit of something out of it. So I think right now I'll just start with gratitude, because that's all I can kind of circle back to. I'm honored to be representing this community. I'm a little shocked that I'm informing anyone of anything, but I recognize that I'm in a unique position here. Basically, to have something to say under 35 is kind of, it's interesting. It's not, and I think it's pretty rare, but with that, and at that starting point, I also have to say thank you to my husband, Devin Nelson Rose. He really is the yang to my yin, and we balance each other out. It's such a funny kind of juvenile lyric from Pink Floyd, but two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl year after year. It really stings true for us. The interesting element to that is, like, no two snowflakes are identical, no human perspective is as well. And everyone has different fears and insecurities, as well as different strengths and securities. So at some point, we're all lost on our journey from A to B, and we're all in different points of A and B. And I've just been so lucky, and serendipity stepped in for me and brought me someone in my life that moored me when we were both adrift. So I guess that's kind of where we're at. We're becoming adrift. We'll talk about that a lot tonight, or today. Devin always knew what he wanted to do. And I had a sense of who I wanted to be. So from there we started. Together, you're still lost, but it's a different emotion. I think when your desires are outside of yourself, when you're working towards somebody else's goals as well as your own, and you have that joy of celebrating each other's wins, it's beautiful. And the second part of that is creating some semblance of stability for your partner in life when you finally make that decision. And inevitably, that stability has to be faked because something goes wrong and things are crazy along the way. But I've found that that's something like faking it till you make it. It's a really trivial and seems super shallow on the outside, but it can lead to magic within you. And especially when you're young and you're doing things by the seat of your pants. Like we're unconditional love and support. That's one of the beautiful things that's come out of it. And it's kind of a theme you'll see because we were so young. Over the next 35, 45 minutes, I hope to clearly express the main themes in my life that have brought me back home and really guided our family and this version of success that we have so far. And maybe shed a little bit of light on what it means to be an entrepreneur in the Northern Neck under 35, a little bit, and hopefully laugh a touch. So I guess I'll just start at the beginning. I was born and raised in the Northern Neck. Actually, Devin and I both were. We were delivered by the local legend, Jim Hamilton, in the golden days of labor and delivery at RGH, probably in the same room. But I digress. If we talked about all of that, it would be a long day. I guess I'm classified as a born here, townie, all of those beautiful things. But I had a direct line to culture beyond this beautiful peninsula. And I think, and that's a condition I like to call the best of the both worlds. On my mother's side, we are firmly rooted in the Northern Neck. When I say that the McNeil lineage is native to this area, I mean it in the furthest way a European can. The 8th great granddaughter of Robert King Carter, but as my mom likes to add, we're the youngest daughters and the black sheep of the family. So the royalty has diluted, but I feel that desire to offer something back to the community. And I do feel a connection to the people here. It's part of me, and it's a part of Devin, so we're lucky to have that. In contrast to that rooted environment or establishment, my father's side is worldly and weird and a little bit of everything. He is the product of a latchkey New York City Irish kid and an old world Japanese beauty that grew up in Japan pre-World War II. I was lucky enough to grow up in a multi-generational home for a while, and if you've been in this community beyond 15 years, you probably saw my Obachan at some point. Despite my parents' objections, she walked from Irvington to TriStar almost once a week, and to everyone who possibly gave her a ride along the way, thank you. She probably should have never driven. She couldn't reach the pedals, but when she finally lost her license, she didn't lose her sense of freedom. She walked everywhere she wanted to go, and on both of those sides, I've grown up with stories of these strong, wild, and very outspoken, willed women from my great-grandmothers. I bring a lot of those stories into the restaurant, and I love hearing them. I know I inherited some chin hair and I'm mean side eye, but I hope I inherited some of their other good qualities. They're, they're forces to be reckoned with on both sides. I don't think I have to spell out why this meeting of the minds was the best of both worlds. But if you'll indulge me just quickly, I'd simply state that having a matriarch that's firmly rooted literally and figuratively was steady and comforting. But having a patriarch that was unique and worldly allowed me to see beyond my limited perspective. Honestly, I'd never stepped on an airplane until I was 17 years old. I, drove anywhere. We were pretty stuck. And, but I felt a part of the larger world. I never felt lacking in that. And I couldn't see the creative possibilities beyond this community. So this has helped me adapt in really contrasting environments, especially our professional life. Everything from getting down and dirty when you have to, and then being posh and upscale and not really knowing what you're doing, but you figure it out. And it's all about how you hold yourself and how you relate with others. All you have to do is have a little bit of class, touch, and then know when to let go of that when you just need to get it done. And in my opinion, the ability to relate to other people is one of the greatest skills you can have, as well as patience. But especially when you're managing staffs and personalities with even guests and just trying to make it all work. All right, I'll throw in a little love story before we have a little conversation. So I met Devin my first day of freshman year of high school in the same hallway that my mom graduated in 1974. So we were always destined to dance around each other, and it was definitely trouble at first sight, but sometimes trouble is good trouble, especially when you stick it out. There's not really much information other than my cool ancestors at that point, but if anybody has questions, I will answer, or we can move on. All right, let's go. So with that shift, I'm going to go into our professional life, which was fun. Before I dive in, I'll have to explain Relay and Chateau. It was our professional tribe. Where we felt at home and where we wanted to stay. And hopefully maybe one day we'll end up back there. Cross our fingers. Both the Inn at Little Washington and L'Auberge Carmel are part of that community. The Inn, Patrick O'Connell was the North American president, and David Fink, the owner of L'Auberge Carmel, was the West Coast representative delegate of sorts. It is a fellowship of international boutique and hotels and fine dining establishments. They all have a like mind in service and guest experience. The motto is the 5 C's, and they're all C's in French and in English, so it's pretty interesting. Character, calm, courtesy, charm, and cuisine. So that's what we still try to live by. It's a part of us and where we like to identify. I say that, we'll go into our professional life. And when I say that, or when I say our, it's because as soon as Devin and I started working together, we never stopped. And we really only upped the ante from there. We were like, how can we get a little crazier? The Inn at Little Washington, and I say this with stars in my eyes and admiration in my voice, it was our home, and I love it, and I still love it, and I'll always love it. Devin had already worked his way up the ranks after finishing culinary school. And he was at the Culinary Institute of America, and we were in Hyde Park, New York, which was really cool too. But I initially rebelled against the idea of being in hospitality, thinking it would be putting me on an act daily. But we all have to work, and there's a reason why the Inn of Little Washington employs half of Rappahannock County. There's not very much else to do. So once I began, I was hooked. Not only is fine dining completely different than just feeding people, it's enchanting. The goal is to offer an experience from start to finish. It's nothing about just a meal. The meal is supposed to be amazing and take over your senses, but it's the experience from start. Funny enough, my initial concerns became the background of my personal growth. Quite literally, we were instructed to move as if we were on the stage. We have to smile through it all with impeccable posture, which I'm glad I've taken away from that. Poise, red lipstick, high heels, and pearls to boot. At first, it did ruffle my feminist feathers a bit. But in practice, it's beautiful. When it's like a dance that transforms your emotions. Environmental upsets, you can't bring them into your day. You get to leave them at the door, and so it relinquishes that power over your mood, because there's always stuff that happens. There's always a slow driver, or it's just things happen. I was contractually obligated to care, but that's just a starting point. People were coming to us with their life savings, for a special event, and they were celebrating something monumental. And it was a beautiful experience where we got to care about every single moment in between. And having a large group of people that all have the same mission allows you to really take care of people. So we were truly hooked, and 5 years went by really fast. I'll say it again, a bad day can't deter you from making somebody else's experience worth it. So this is where we had to fake it and make it sometimes. When you fake a smile, but you have a genuine intent to uplift somebody else, it really will change your day. I think it's...
Quick question, what was your role? What did you do?
So I started out in reservations, and then I moved over to the front desk and maitre d'. So with that, I was the first person to draw a bridge between those two departments, which was huge and lacking, and nobody knew it was a problem until I got over there, and they were like, oh wow, there are all of these things that they don't know on this side that they need to know, and so that was my main role, was building a bridge, and then eventually going straight over to Neil O'Hare was my direct person. So he was the he was the director of the dining room, and I was his person that he could ask where everybody was at any certain moment, and I would have to have a list, and and the stress was there. This is one of those moments when you're living in excitement and pure terror, but I think that's part of being a young adult. You don't really know what you're doing. You have to make it up along the way. And the Inn became an extension of our education. Our peers became our family, and our bosses became our mentors, and we get to carry that with us forever. Everyone that we worked with, we kind of all equate it to like a second college, where we had fun and we dealt with all the crazy and had good food at the end of the day and good drink, and it was worth it. At that time, Devin and I were able to identify our strengths, our weaknesses, and everything in between. And the decision to leave there to pursue more skills was really hard. I honestly could have stayed there forever, but it's just because it's just so lovely, and we were close to family relatively. We were valued, loved, and it was necessary because growth is important. It's just like when I tell kids that work with us, I'm just like, you just need to go. You can come back. You can always come back, but try it out. So we took our East Coast work ethic to the West Coast, which is funny because it's a big difference. La Berge Carmel in Restaurant Aubergine is a paradise. It's just south of Pebble Beach and just north of Big Sur. We didn't have much money. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, but we had the most beautiful outdoor experience. We weren't in the apartment very much. So it's as another Relais and Chateau property, the ethics and the values behind our guest experience were the same. So I was really just able to amplify that and work more on the hotel side, which is exciting for me. And then all the while, Devin was experimenting with a completely different approach to food. It's a clean, Pacific-based, and a lot of Asian techniques. We were surrounded by the best sushi too. I still haven't been able to beat that. I hope one day we'll be able to travel somewhere that does. But my international exposure flourished when we were in California. California just draws more people from around the world than a little Washington did. So I liken life to wine a little bit because it's all about experience and exposure. You don't know what you like and you don't know what you are even open to until that door's been open. And once it is, you can never go back to just Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Cab. I mean, there's so much more out there. But there was only a few short years, but those years were really integral and kind of solidifying our development and kind of getting those creative juices flowing. Neither one of us thought we would come back home, but it was in the game plan down the road. Something a little too perfect kind of actually drew us in and got us back home. And I have to admit that at first I thought it was a massive mistake. I was like, what did we do? Neither Devin or I could pursue our passion and our career passion to the degree that we wanted to. We were planning to escape when Devin got the fateful call, and the building that he had wanted since he was a little boy was available. Sorry, can you all hear me? All right, I'll try to get closer. Okay, that might be better. All right. So serendipity stepped in again. And once again, it made our life path a little inescapable. I am hard-headed. It's self-acknowledged at this point in my life. But in the beginning of our journey, Adrift, I was a bit oblivious. Some part of me still thought I could control the entire narrative, but I was very wrong. I cannot tell you the number of times we have had to pivot, but I'll try, because adapt or die, and that's really what we've found. Thankfully, we've had familial support and for our son and us, and a massive dream to sustain us. So let's jump right in, and I guess that's kind of the
theme of this is just jumping in, because that's all we did. Devin is ambitious. It's rarely said, but the intensity of that emotion is always felt. In the early days of concept building, I anticipated not sleeping for 2 years, but I had no idea what the clientele, COVID, our team, and life would have in store for us. In every way, this has been like having a child. Whenever anybody asks us when we're going to expand our family, I kind of just gesture to Adrift and tell them that she's our second child. All right, so I guess, does anybody have questions at this point? We're good? All right, perfect. So what is it like to build a restaurant? I can only speak from experience, as it's always different, and our end goals are always different. So Adrift is our offering back to the community that raised us. We've taken all of our training, passion, and life experience and given it 4 walls and a roof. The restaurant itself is an extension of ourselves. And in this area, I don't think it's really possible to do it any other way, because you can't hire other people to have a heart for you and put a heart in a building. And remember that excitement laced with pure fear. This is definitely one of those moments. And we know our hometown. We know that there are infrastructure issues and that there's a stark dichotomy of human experience and of human desires in life. So when I was initially writing this next phase, I was saying, luckily we know our workforce, but luck had nothing to do with it. Luck can't take place of knowledge. We knew what to expect, and we knew it wasn't going to be easy. And how do you create something big enough to make a profit and also small enough to sustain or to run on your blood, sweat, and tears? That was it. That was the game plan. How could we do that? It's not a linear path. And we've had to adjust to our guest desires and our staff's ability. And we're maybe doing a good job. It was a feat, and the entire journey has felt like climbing a mountain. The terrain is constantly changing, and once you're at the top, there's a new path to be taken downhill. So our original business plan is nothing like you see from Adrift today at all. Marriage, business, restaurants, oh my, it's a lot. You've heard a lot of my story and my family story already, but I can brag and say that Devin's heritage added so many layers, and they connect us all together in such a wild way that this little bit was luck, because when you're opening a restaurant, you need to have a story. You need to have a way to connect. And, luckily we were born and raised here, so we did. You have to establish a narrative, and it might be the only thing that you have control over the entire time. But stick with what you know and weave a tapestry of your existence within the community. And because people love a story, we all do. So the second thing you have to do is establish a market. 6 years ago, there was no breakfast spot in Whitestone at all. And we had a young son, a 6-year-old son, so we were like, oh, this is a perfect niche. All you have to do is sit on Rappahannock Drive one Monday morning, and you can see the sheer amount of traffic driving through Whitestone. Devin makes a mean eggs Benedict and the best French rolled omelet I've ever had. And I can do a Bloody Mary pretty well. So we decided to just do it. Let's just jump right in. We worked a day job and then spent every night into the wee hours tearing everything out, repainting everything. all so we could get to a blank canvas. Many people remember stopping in at this point and finding our son River and our dog like cuddled up underneath the table at 1 o'clock in the morning while we were just frantic and a mess, but it was worth it. We knew that the painting and all was going to be a work in progress and anticipated that, but we did not anticipate not being able to get a small line of credit early on in the game. And herein lies one of the difficulties of coming back home. Fine dining experience, culinary expertise, and support from mentors that nobody else has ever heard of doesn't really carry weight with people who haven't experienced that, don't know what a Roland Chateau is, or Patrick O'Connell, David Fink, or even what a French rolled omelet is. That was one of our biggest challenges early on. And we were lucky. We were really lucky to have some great people in our corner. Eventually it all worked out, but the initial part of that set a lot of things in motion, and a lot of it looked like, okay, let's just do this. We had to open our doors yesterday. We were at a point where our food orders were maxing out our credit cards, and we had $200 in our name. We still had a Chesapeake Academy tuition at the time, so it was a little hairy. And we persisted. It was just the two of us at first. And on Memorial Day weekend, we finally got our ABC license. Then we were able to turn a little profit. That's a big part of restaurants. They need alcohol. This allowed us to employ other people than our fathers, which was a big point in our life. And by June, we had 5 employees and we were open for dinner service. Devin and I knew fine dining, but we also knew that we had not dumped nearly enough raw cash into this building to be considered fine dining. Plates, aesthetics, everything. We were there. But we had to start with what we knew and what we had. So we had to be creative, and it gets you through a lot of tough spots in life. With a prefix dinner, which is a tasting menu of sorts, we can make a high-end meal with a controlled budget cost. And that really was why we did everything. I mean, it's our wheelhouse and we felt comfortable doing it like riding a bike, but there's a cost-effective part of that. Our staff was wholly inexperienced. We were wholly inexperienced delegating, and we all learned together. Having a set menu allows you to orchestrate things from the behind. So that was allowing Devin and I to have the knowledge to guide everybody around you. This also gave our staff time to learn our food and learn our style of serving, because it's very different than what you would normally get here. We never wanted to be pretentious, but we wanted to serve the food that we wanted to eat and bring back our food culture to our hometown, and teach our staff how to anticipate our guests' needs, because that's one of my favorite things about being in this industry, is being able to serve people and truly do that. And then let's talk about the nitty-gritty part of staffing. I guess that's a really big part of being in the restaurant industry. Our original team seems like a lifetime ago, but lifetimes are short in the restaurant industry. They're really, really short. We have trained well over 50 people, and that can be very tedious, especially when you look back on it. But the relationships that we've been able to build, the young people that we've seen go off to college and create something more. Also, just even the short experiences and getting to know, kids that went to college and came back and Now we're in New York City, so we're like, oh great, we have some place to stay there. So it's nice. It's a gym, and it's always easier to do things yourself. But that's rarely, as we all know, that's rarely the best path. And it's what I found in the front of house, which is completely different than what Devin does. We're just going to speak from my experience, is to keep it simple and basically start with 3 main objectives when you start. First off, we treat our patrons like guests in our home. That's a little gem from Patrick O'Connell, and it's ingrained in me in so many ways. Another thing that he would say is that people don't want to hear your whole life story, so there's a gentle place in between. But in that way, I think really what it comes down to is having a sense of pride in your home and wanting everyone to have a good experience and walk away enjoying themselves. The biggest thing service-wise is anticipating everyone's needs. No one wants to be missing their fork when their dinner comes, or not have a nice napkin, an extra napkin with a really messy cheeseburger. I think there's these little things that are simple, but they're not innately known in people. You really have to teach that and that awareness. And that's our base level. That's where we start. And another thing that seems funny, but it really gets you by in chaos, is you under promise and over deliver. Your word means nothing if you're promising everything to everybody. And when things are chaotic, you can't do it. But you can always have it on the list and be like, if you can do it, it'll make this really great. And that's one of the things we teach our staff, because everyone just wants to say yes to everything, and it's just not possible. But you can try your best always. Eventually, you're able to see an individual's growth and where their strengths are, and it's our job to create a niche for them within that. One of the most amazing things about this celebrity chef culture and the whole restaurant obsession is that it gave a platform to people who've already done this and gave them an audience to listen to their books and stuff like that. One of the things that always sticks through to me is Danny Myers. He's from New York City. You'll know him of Shake Shacks are everywhere now, and Gramercy Tavern. He's part of a huge restaurant group. But one of the things he says is you gotta hire great people and get out of their way. Like, train them, tell them what you want, and then let them go from there. And it's how you start to let go and how you can continue to grow. And cynically, I also never believe what people's experience is on a piece of paper. I just watch and adjust and create space for them to flourish, because their experience can be, or their idea of fine dining can be very different than ours. So with this staffing issue, we have to think of the future of destination locations all around the world. As a person who's only worked at destination locations and never made that much money, we really need, the infrastructure issue around here is we need a better housing market. And Airbnbs are good and bad. They offer exposure and more clients, which is amazing. But like COVID and that whole Airbnb thing gobbled up all of the first starter homes that were in this area. And the one thing I'm really excited to see in Whitestone particularly is there are a number of apartment buildings that are coming up. And Devin and I were just talking about how up and coming it is and how amazing that we'll actually be able to offer our position to somebody of talent outside of the area. Before, you can't do that. Our staff wouldn't have to commute an average of 30 minutes to come to work. And that's 30 minutes going home at night. And some of those, it's an hour. And the crazy thing with young people would actually be able to move out of their parents' homes. But, you know, those are big issues. I really hope that we can see more of that, and, you know, the bubble will turn around and more people can buy homes, because it's important. It's like a rung in the ladder that I think we all want to get to. So I still don't know how we survived that initial year. Once our first winter hit, we knew we had to pivot again. The 3 and 5 course options wasn't going to sustain us through the winter time, and we had to listen to our guests. And this time we offered breakfast, lunch, a la carte, and the prefix menu. So it was a doozy, but timing was great. We did it in the slower winter months, and we have found it's the best time to enact a change, because it gives you time to work out the kinks. And there are always kinks, even when you think you have it all worked out. And then COVID hit. So some people stopped working during that time, but it was the exact opposite for us. It was really back to the bare bones crew that Devin and I started with. It was just the 2 of us, and we had 1 employee that was full-time that stayed with us throughout the entire moment. His name is Corey. Many people know him. He's now studying to be a nurse, and he's, another great part of this community. We worked a lot, but the silver lining prevailed. The forced break allowed us to create a healthier lifestyle for our family, for us. And that's a journey we've been on ever since, and having a 12-year-old, and time is of the essence, and it doesn't last forever. So no more 19-hour days, no more waking up at 5:30 in the morning and going until after midnight. We shifted to just dinner and only a la carte. And because sometimes you have to stare mayhem in the eyes and retreat. So it was offering 3 completely different styles was wild. We were doing a la carte, we were doing prefix menus, and then we also had a new bar business that we had just remodeled into, and we have a shoebox of a kitchen, and the max capacity is 2 people. So that's it. So we decided to make a shift again, and you're kind of where we're at in the restaurant now. So any questions? Yes.
What did you do after high school while he was going to culinary school?
As soon as I graduated high school, I got in my car and I moved in with my sister in Northern Virginia. It was less than a week. I like to say that the bridge is just the most magical thing, and it gives you a lot of emotions. But when you're leaving it for the first time, it's like a breath of fresh air. You like get cross, but then that first, I went to school at VCU, and that first winter break coming home, I remember hitting the bridge and getting hit with that salt air and just the nostalgia. And I never admitted it then, but I definitely missed it. And I kind of just was wild and worked and went to school, and then this guy wrote me back in. We really truly could not get away from each other, which is like different states, middle of the dark, you would still run into each other. That's what happens when you have the same interest. But one of the interesting things about building a business and that we really worked for was owning the building. It's something that we've seen in our mentors, and not that strength and that success, and having a brick and mortar that represents you and your time and your effort. So every single year, we put more and more back into it. And if you see the pictures from when we started to now, it's kind of mind-boggling. And all of our chairs match now. So I'm really proud of it, and I hope you are too. Yes.
How do you go about selecting your menus? Because it varies all the time.
It does. And I'm not entirely the person to answer this question, but this is food for, especially at our training, is an avant-garde expression of your art. So Devin works within the colors of his palette. And that changed, but a lot of that has to do with our experiences, where we grew up, those family recipes, and then just the respect for the food. And it's always a delicate balance. It's spicy, sweet, savory, salty, all those things really work together, and it's extremely nice to have somebody to be able to bounce things off of. Devin, at this point, we're now 6 years in, and we have a guy that can be considered a sous chef. It's awesome. And just like when I make drinks, I'm constantly going back to my staff members in my kitchen and asking them to taste something for me, because everybody's taste buds are different, and we all bring in an interesting element. So the food stuff, I think it's taking on a little bit more of a creative flair lately, but it's definitely an extension of our experiences. So, all right. Yes.
How easy or difficult is it to get the food that you need for your
Oh, yeah.
recipes and so on? Now, how accessible is all that?
During COVID, it was not. That was a big thing. But we have a beautiful option right here on the bay that a lot of people don't really utilize, because it does entail a lot more work. But we have an advantage where we grew up with most of these guys that are commercial watermen, and our sons play baseball together, so there's a nice relationship there. So food, fish, all that was never an issue. Also, having worked in destination locations all over the country, you get to know the right purveyors. So we knew who to reach out to. COVID still it just got sticky for everyone. And then with the fear of the bridge and some of the times that the bridge would get shut down, it's an interesting thing. But we have an amazing farm, a local doctor, or retired doctor, emergency room doctor, that has his family's farm over in Akron. And he pretty much just grows for us. So through winter, summer, spring, we basically just take what he can give us, and it doesn't matter. That's a big thing about the menu, is there's no game plan. It's just, it's almost like a mystery box that you just work with, and you know how to paint, so that works.
Good point.
Yes.
Question. Where do you see yourself going, like in 3 years, 5 years, whatever?
That is a big one. At this point, I think I like it to that mountain. We're at the top of this mountain, this perceived success, but with that, there's a totally new path to be taken downhill. And Devin always loves to spring his new ideas on me. I have to tell him one thing at a time. Can we please just finish working on this one? But when we have land, and we want to preserve the beauty of this area and make it accessible to people, because if you don't live on the water, it can be hard to see what's going on. And you know, there's so many beautiful things here, but you kind of need a guide. And there's so much history here too. That's a really fun thing I've been delving into. But we want to create that guide to the area, the really neat people that are moving in or have come home, and then go back to our super fine dining roots at some point and offer something very small, very niche, and that we can take all of our time and put all of our pride into that, you know, to make it look fine dining, to finally dump all that cash somewhere.
So you're gonna do it here?
Yes,
Oh, wonderful.
yes, we're staying in the Northern Neck. But this is home, and we can always get in a camper and go down to the beach. So both are beautiful, but this is our home. And someday we will actually start building our house. It's not there yet, but that's where all the magic will eventually happen. And we will be adrift and kind of probably rearrange a lot of things, a lot of moving parts, but that's where Adrift is. We didn't know where we were going to end up. We just knew where we wanted to start. So, right. Perfect. All right. I guess I can say I have a little extra. Pat, when we initially talked, she was asking me why, or is this rewarding? Is it rewarding having a restaurant in your hometown? And all I can say is that there's a long and a short answer to that. I think this is more of a philosophy. Every experience is rewarding. The silver lining is the most important thing, and we need to learn how to look for it. And I think I've survived through all the stress of love, marriage, restaurants, and fear because of that. And I don't think we can truly embrace things until, or we can't, let me explain this, sorry. We need to look at mayhem sometimes and understand why we need to retreat. It's not anything against your character or anything like that. It's just looking at what you're going to take away from something and finding a place where those skills can be used later on. So there have been many ups and downs of this journey, but it has been immensely rewarding. And I've come to know that deeply within my soul, because I said earlier, I am very hard-headed. So I've had to learn some lessons more than once. But once I finally embrace it, you know, I know that it doesn't come back around. It's really important for kids to learn that. And I think it really comes down to that things don't trigger you anymore. Once you've addressed something and you've seen what your trigger is, that trigger is no longer there. And maybe you're healing, I don't know. So another really big thing about the rewarding aspects is having young minds that we can interact with and influence with our little bit of wisdom, like get out of town, like just spread your wings. And it's always back here, but you need to experience more. And when you do, the doors they pop wide off, and it's a fun ride from there. Then this is the thing I'm probably the most passionate about, and it's the relationship with our guests and our friends. We get to create a safe space, and growing up in this town and having a young, impressionable mind, I was fearful of kind of how small that can be. But this community is rich, and there's so many layers, and it's beautiful, and I'm just glad that we get to offer something back and have a space where everyone feels welcome. And if I could see all types of people and all types of walks of life in the restaurant every day, I mean, it would be a blessing, because it's important to be able to see change and see different things. I'm also really proud of the work culture that we have. That's one of the biggest things I hear from other restaurateurs, is that their staff doesn't like each other. Especially front of house. So we all like each other. We genuinely do. And we have longevity, and even when things change, we all welcome the change. And that's a really hard thing to enact, and I'm proud of that fact. So it's all rewarding, and all. But that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We do have time for more questions if anybody has any questions. Great, thank you. Great.
Yes.
You know, one of the things you can't help but think about when you're in the restaurant particularly is, I mean, you work all day together, and then you live together, and you raise a child together. I mean, how does that work?
You know, at some points in the roller coaster, we've had to have different hobbies. And there is a beauty in that, but as I'm growing and learning, it's also about, making a time where you say, we're not going to talk about work, we're not going to talk about River, and I often have to be reminded not to. And just creating a space where it's just the two of us, and a lot of times we just go out to eat because we love to eat, and it's just homework for us, because we just sit there and dissect everything and try to find how we would do it at home, but that's it. And also a little bit of laughter goes a long way.
You enjoy cooking at home?
I do. I'm the main cook at home, although Devin, we like to sneak up to the restaurant and just cook there, because it's a much bigger space. One day when our house is done, it'll be amazing, and I look forward to cooking there. Right now we live in an 1820s farmhouse. It's exactly enough said. Yes.
So your time on the West Coast, I didn't quite understand where you stayed there, or how many years you were there. San Francisco and San Diego, or one?
No, so this is Carmel by the Sea. It's smack dab in the middle.
I know where it is.
Yeah. We were there exclusively. We worked with David Fink at L'Auberge Carmel in Restaurant Aubergine. So this time we didn't have any family around us, so we worked split shifts. I would either I was the grunt to the general managers, and so I would work daytime hotel and then eventually overnight, like audit, and then Devin would work in the evenings. So we didn't see each other much, but
it's a beautiful setting. So.
It is beautiful, and everything's right there, and all we had to do was go outside and enjoy life. But it was wonderful. Yeah.
How long were you there?
2 years. Mm-hmm. Just long enough to spend all of our money. Yes.
It sounds like you're not doing breakfast anymore.
We had to stop burning the candle on both ends. We just had to pick one side.
You still get eggs Benedict and Bloody Marys.
Bloody Marys, yes, and maybe we'll have to bring the Eggs Benedict back some nights. Little breakfast for dinner. I love a good breakfast for dinner. Perfect.
Thank you so much. Personally, faking it till you make it, that's a good strategy till you're 80. Thank you so much. We have refreshments in the back. We have a survey. If you haven't had a chance to fill one out, we really appreciate feedback that helps us to pick speakers for the future. And there are some flyers about our next speaker, who is on the 10th of March. Thank you so much. Thank you, Katie. This was great.